Just doing something as simple as this and being able to come back here and give this to these kids and these families is really important, and hopefully it starts their academic year off right.
Recently, Caitlin Clark has just demonstrated that abuse, whether verbal or physical, is a serious issue that must be condemned. It was a busy evening in this restaurant, and everyone seemed to be enjoying the moment. Suddenly, a black girl accidentally broke a glass, causing a waitress to shout at her. The situation escalated, and just when she thought everything was over, the waitress kicked her out. At that moment, Caitlin Clark intervened. What did Caitlin do next that shocked everyone? How did her actions change the girl's experience? Join us as we share the story of how Caitlin Clark helped a black girl who was kicked out.
Caitlin's generosity and how it impacts and will impact just hundreds of students in our community. I mean, Caitlin Clark clearly is one of the most recognizable face in basketball.
Waitress kicks out black girl. It was a busy evening at Cooper's Cafe. The restaurant was filled with people. The atmosphere was filled with voices and clattering of dishes. Bright fluorescent lights lit up the happy decor, while the aroma of food could be perceived in the open space. In the restaurant was Olivia, a young black girl moving carefully from table to table. As a dedicated cleaner, she was focusing on her tasks, bending and stretching as she wiped surfaces and gathered used dishes. Though her job was simple, she took it seriously, knowing that each shift meant a little more help for her. She worked hard, but she always felt anxious. Being under supervision made her feel pressured. She could feel the heat of the kitchen behind her and shouting mixed with laughter from the customers. It was all overwhelming, though she took pride in her work and found a quiet satisfaction in doing it well. But with the weight of so many eyes on her, something unexpected happened. As Olivia reached for a glass resting at the edge of the table, her fingers shook slightly. Her grip was careful, but in an instant, her hand slipped and the glass fell. It broke on the floor with a loud crash, attracting attention from customers who turned in that direction. Her heart pounded as she gathered the broken pieces, worried about the consequences. Olivia felt the panic creep in her as she bent down, hoping to clean up the mess quickly and avoid further embarrassment. However, before she could finish cleaning up, one of her superiors, Denise, the head waitress known for no-nonsense attitude, noticed the incident and approached her immediately with a stern look. Denise had always intimidated Olivia, and now, as she stood opposite her, Olivia felt a shiver in her body. The waitress's words were harsh as she scolded Olivia for her carelessness. Everyone had turned to look, drawn by the commotion. Olivia's quiet attempts to apologize were barely audible under the waitress's loud voice. Each word felt heavier than the last, pressing down on Olivia's shoulders as she stood embarrassed. Customers glanced over, some murmuring, others quickly looked away. The weight of their look added to the sting of the waitress's scolding, intensifying the moment. The waitress continued her verbal attack on Olivia. Olivia's eyes strayed around the room, wishing she could disappear into the floor. She could see her co-workers exchanging glances, some with pity, others with indifference. The lively atmosphere in the restaurant suddenly changed as Denise kept yelling at Olivia, as if the yelling was not enough. The waitress made a move that shocked everyone. Olivia didn't see it coming, and she knew she would never forget it. In a shocking move, she struck Olivia on the cheek, her hand landing with a sting. She ordered Olivia to get out, adding that she was ruining everything. Denise had always picked on Olivia, finding fault in her for reasons Olivia couldn't control, perhaps because she was young. At this point, Olivia was seriously hurt, but could not defend herself. She just nodded with her eyes fixed on the floor as she walked out of the room. She felt tears welling in her eyes, but she fought them back. The last thing she wanted was to show how deeply affected she was by this moment. She found a small shed nearby and sat down, trying to get over the moment. It was a place where she could gather her thoughts away from prying eyes. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that one mistake didn't define her. Yet the hurt of being scolded in front of others weighed heavily on her heart. In that moment, Olivia resolved to learn from this experience, vowing that she would not let it hold her back. The day might have ended on a bad note, but she was determined to rise again, stronger than before. While the event unfolded, no one noticed the presence of Caitlin Clark, likely because the restaurant was especially busy that afternoon. Seated quietly with her friends, Caitlin had witnessed the entire scene, her gaze fixed on the young black girl being humiliated. An unmistakable frown crossed her face as she saw the waitress's harsh treatment of Olivia. But how did Caitlin react to this? Caitlin Clark's reaction. Earlier that afternoon, Caitlin Clark had visited the restaurant with her friends after their basketball training. They had been looking forward to a relaxing meal, eager to unwind and chat about the day. They sat at a table near the back of the diner. The laughter and conversation around her flowed easily, but Caitlin's attention kept drifting toward the young black girl clearing tables nearby. She noticed the girl's quiet focus, moving from table to table with a dedication that stood out even in the busy hum of the diner. Caitlin's look became intense and more focused as the girl accidentally knocked over a glass, which broke loudly on the floor. Immediately, a waitress hurried over, her tone harsh and words sharp as she began to scold the girl. Caitlin felt her chest tighten. The waitress's voice carried a harsh tone that didn't seem fair, especially given the girl's young age. The girl tried to apologize, her voice barely audible over the waitress's words. Caitlin could see the girl's embarrassment as she picked up the broken glass with her hands shaking. The scene struck a chord with Caitlin. She had seen people treated poorly before, but something about this moment felt different. Perhaps it was the girl's quiet, apologetic manner, or perhaps it was the way the waitress dismissed her without a second thought. Caitlin's friends continued their conversation, unaware of the tension Caitlin felt building inside her. As Caitlin finished her meal, her eyes followed the girl. She watched the girl lower her head, leaving the diner without a word. Caitlin felt a surge of empathy for her. She knew how hard it was to face setbacks, though her own had come on a very different path. This girl's challenges were rooted in everyday struggles, ones that Caitlin felt were all too often overlooked. When Caitlin stood up to leave, the image of the girl's quiet, humiliated departure stayed with her. She felt a pull, an instinct to do something, though she wasn't entirely sure what. With these feelings, Caitlin decided to intervene. Caitlin stepped outside, looking around, and noticed the girl sitting alone under a small shed nearby, her shoulders hunched as she stared into the distance. Caitlin felt this determination within her. She didn't know this girl's story, but now she knew enough about this incident. Caitlin took a deep breath, preparing to introduce herself and offer the girl a way forward. She walked toward her, moving slowly to avoid scaring her, having sensed the fear in her eyes. The girl seemed so young, caught between the innocence of childhood and the responsibilities that life had put upon her. As Caitlin approached, she could see the traces of tears still fresh on the girl's face. Caitlin took a moment, gathering her thoughts, aware that the girl might be afraid of a stranger. She introduced herself, hoping to ease the girl's tension. Slowly, the girl's sad expression began to change. Her curiosity seemed awakened by the kind stranger before her. Caitlin sensed an opportunity to connect and gently asked the girl about what had happened inside, acknowledging the weight of the moment without pressing too hard. Through small, hesitant responses, Caitlin learned the girl's name was Olivia and that she was only 15 years old. Each word she spoke revealed more about her circumstances, piecing a story that felt all too familiar to Caitlin. Olivia explained in simple terms the burden she carried to support her mother, a struggle that had kept her out of school and led her to the cleaning job that now felt like another barrier. Caitlin felt a deep empathy rise within her, a shared understanding of what it meant to work hard and persevere, though the paths they had taken were different. The more Caitlin learned about Olivia, the more she felt the need to help. She saw in Olivia a resilience that deserved nurturing, a light that should not be dimmed by hardship. She expressed her concern over Olivia working instead of studying, a gentle reminder of the potential she still held, untapped and waiting. She asked briefly about Olivia's family, learning of the mother who did her best to provide yet struggled to meet all of her daughter's needs. Moved by Olivia's story, Caitlin felt this sense of responsibility within her. She reached into her bag, pulling out a card with her office address and contact information, and extended it to Olivia. She encouraged Olivia to share it with her mother and instructed her to have her mother give her a call so they could arrange a meeting and discuss how she could be helped. This small but meaningful gesture carried the promise of future assistance. Caitlin's hope was simple yet strong, that this card would become a bridge to new possibilities for Olivia, a connection that might change the course of her life. As Caitlin stepped away, she left Olivia with a sense of hope and assurance. Even as she left, the incident lingered in her mind, occupying her thoughts. Caitlin couldn't help but wonder about the kind of home Olivia came from and the upbringing that had led her to this moment. Was she supported and encouraged, or did she face challenges that felt overwhelming? Let's take a closer look at Olivia's family. The true story of Olivia Thomas. Olivia Thomas was the only child of her mother. Her father had deserted them when Olivia was just 3, leaving her mother to cater to their needs alone. Olivia's life had never been simple, but at 15, she understood responsibility in a way many her age did not. Growing up with her single mother, she had witnessed struggles that taught her resilience early on. Her mother worked tirelessly, often juggling multiple jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. Olivia saw the effort and the weariness in her mother's eyes. She also saw a love that pushed her mother to sacrifice everything for her well-being. As Olivia grew older, her mother's health began to deteriorate. She noticed the quiet moments when her mother would sit down, exhausted, or the times she had let out a faint cough. Medical bills started to pile up, adding strain to their already tight finances. Olivia knew her mother could not bear the entire load alone. So, despite her age and longing to stay in school, Olivia decided to work, hoping to lighten her mother's burden. Leaving school was difficult, but Olivia was determined to support her mother. She found work as a cleaner at the diner, where each shift demanded more of her than she had expected. Her body ached after long hours, but each paycheck was a small victory, a step toward easing her mother's struggle. Olivia didn't mind the work. She felt it was her way of showing gratitude to her mother. And while her dream of continuing her education remained in her mind, she kept it tucked away, knowing their survival came first. Olivia usually handed over all her earnings to her mother whenever she got paid, and her mother always accepted them with a smile that masked her worry. Olivia knew her mother appreciated the gesture, even if it couldn't solve all their problems. On this particular afternoon, the very day she met Caitlin Clark, Olivia returned home after the incident. Her mother expected the usual envelope, but instead Olivia quietly handed her mother a small card. This time, Olivia felt an excitement bubbling inside her. Her mother looked at her with a surprise. The curiosity in her eyes was glaring as she wondered who had given Olivia the card. Olivia then recounted everything that had happened earlier that day. As she spoke, she noticed tears welling in her mother's eyes, and her heart ached at the sight. Olivia gently reassured her mother that this could be something good for them. Her mother took a deep breath, her smile returning as she wiped her tears away. Finally, she decided to take a look at the card with curiosity. Her mother's eyes widened as she read the name printed on the card: Caitlin Clark, the famous basketballer and philanthropist. She looked at her daughter, a flicker of surprise and hope lighting her eyes. She knew of Caitlin, had read about her work and her generosity. This was no ordinary stranger. Caitlin was someone who had the power to change lives. At that moment, Olivia saw a new expression on her mother's face, a hope of possibility of dreams that had once seemed far out of reach. For Olivia and her mother, that small card represented more than just a phone number. It was a bridge to a future they had never dared to imagine. The card stayed on their table that night, a symbol of hope that marked a turning point in their lives, hinting at a path that might finally lead them to a better life. The following day, Olivia's mother made the call to Caitlin, introducing herself as the woman whose daughter she gave a card. From this call, they arranged an appointment, and soon after, Olivia and her mother visited Caitlin in her office. It was this visit that would ultimately change their lives forever. Olivia visited Caitlin with her mother. Olivia and her mother walked into Caitlin's office, their steps filled with a mix of nervousness and hope. They had dressed in their best clothes, a small attempt to show respect and gratitude for the opportunity ahead. As they moved through the hallway, Olivia felt her heartbeat quicken. She looked up at her mother, who squeezed her hand reassuringly, yet Olivia could see the same anticipation in her mother's eyes. They knew that this meeting had the potential to change their lives. When they entered the office, Caitlin greeted them with a warmth that immediately put them at ease. Her presence was calm and inviting, her smile genuine as she welcomed them in. Before Caitlin began speaking, Olivia's mother took a moment to express her gratitude. She thanked Caitlin for intervening during the incident at the diner, mentioning how her daughter had shared everything with her and how grateful they both were for her kindness. Caitlin smiled softly in response, acknowledging the challenges they had faced. She expressed her desire to help Olivia continue her education, explaining how she would cover Olivia's school fees, ensuring that the girl could pursue her studies without worry. Olivia and her mother listened intently, their hearts filled with a mixture of disbelief and relief. In addition to supporting her studies, Caitlin offered Olivia the opportunity to join a youth sports development program, an initiative funded by Caitlin herself to encourage participation in athletic programs from a young age. But that wasn't all. Caitlin also informed Olivia's mother that they would be beneficiaries of the Coralville Community Food Pantry, an initiative supported by Caitlin Clark's foundation aimed at supporting local families struggling with food insecurity. She promised to help Olivia's mother find a job to provide additional support for their family. Caitlin made it a point to keep in touch, occasionally reaching out to check on Olivia's progress and share words of encouragement. These offers meant the world to Olivia, reminding her that someone believed in her potential, while Caitlin's guidance provided her with a steady hand to hold on to as she navigated her new path. What are your thoughts on Caitlin Clark's intervention during the incident at the diner and the incredible support she provided to Olivia afterward? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content. Also, click on the next video on your screen. You will love it.